Have you ever wondered how a single moment can change everything? How the touch of another person can awaken something inside you that you thought was long gone? Let me take you on a journey, a story that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I think about it. This is my story, and I promise by the end of it, you'll feel every emotion I felt. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind where the air feels alive, and the world seems to hold its breath. I was in my garden, as usual, tending to the hydrangeas. At 57, I'd learned to find solace in the simple things: the smell of fresh soil, the sound of leaves rustling, the way the sunlight danced on the petals. My garden had become my sanctuary after my husband James passed away 5 years ago. It was the one place where I could breathe, where I could feel close to him again. But that day, something was different. Can you recall a moment when you felt like the universe was about to shift? Share your thoughts in the comments. I was kneeling, my hands deep in the earth, checking the roots of a new plant I'd just added. Everything was peaceful, just like any other day. But then, out of nowhere, a sharp, searing pain shot through my lower back. It was so intense that I dropped the trowel I was holding and gasped. For a moment, I couldn't move. The pain radiated down my legs, and I felt frozen, helpless. Have you ever experienced a pain so sudden it left you breathless? Drop a yes in the comments if you know what that feels like. And then, like an answer to a prayer I hadn't even uttered, I heard his voice. "Aunt Laurel, are you okay?" It was my step-nephew, Ethan. He was 25, with a tall, athletic build and eyes that seemed to see right through you. His dark hair was tousled, and his face, oh his face, was the kind that made you do a double take. He had this quiet confidence, a presence that filled the room without him even trying. And there he was, standing in my garden, looking at me with such concern that it made my heart skip a beat. "My back," I managed to say, pointing to the spot where the pain was worst. "Something's wrong. I can't move." Ethan didn't hesitate. He crouched down beside me, his hands already reaching out. "Let me help," he said, his voice calm but firm. When his hands touched my shoulders, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a shiver, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. "I'll give you a massage. It usually helps," he added. Still with me? Drop a yes in the comments to let me know you're tuned in. I didn't have the strength to protest. Honestly, I didn't want to. His hands were strong but gentle, and as he began to press into the knots in my back, the pain started to fade. But what surprised me more was the warmth that spread through me, not just from his touch, but from something else, something I hadn't felt in so long. It was as if the lonely woman inside me had been asleep, and Ethan's touch was waking her up. I let out a breath, a little too deep, and for a moment, I thought I saw him pause, his hands lingering just a second longer than necessary. "Laurel," he said softly, his voice breaking the silence, "this is really bad. We can't fix this out here. Let's get you inside." He helped me to my feet, his arm around my waist, steadying me. His touch was firm but careful, and I couldn't help but notice how safe I felt with him so close. Have you ever felt that kind of safety with someone? That feeling like, no matter what, they've got you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Inside, the fireplace was crackling, filling the room with a warm golden glow. Ethan spread a blanket on the floor and motioned for me to lie down. "You need to stretch out your back," he said, his eyes serious but soft. "I've got some cream. It'll help loosen those muscles." I lay down, feeling the heat from the fire seep into my skin, and then I felt his hands again, warm from the cream, pressing into my shoulders. The moment his fingers touched me, I let out a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. "Just relax," he murmured, his voice low and soothing. "You'll feel better in no time." But as his hands moved down my back, I realized it wasn't just the pain that was fading. It was something else, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. His touch was awakening something in me, something I thought I'd buried along with James. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Have you ever felt that kind of awakening? That moment when you realize you're not as numb as you thought you were? Type 1 if you know what I mean. Ethan's hands were steady, his touch deliberate, and with every movement, I felt myself unraveling. It wasn't just my back that was loosening up, it was my heart, my soul. I looked up at him, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, something deep and unspoken, that made my breath catch. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the crackling fire. He smiled that same quiet, confident smile, and replied, "Anytime." In that moment, I didn't feel 57. I didn't feel like a widow. I felt alive, truly alive, for the first time in years. And as I lay there, with Ethan's hands on my back and the fire warming my skin, I realized something. Life wasn't over for me. Not yet. There was still so much to feel, so much to experience. And maybe, just maybe, Ethan was going to be a part of that. But let's not stop there. Let's dive deeper into what happened next. Because this wasn't just a moment, it was the beginning of something I never saw coming. After that day, Ethan started visiting more often. At first, it was under the guise of checking on my back, making sure I was okay. But soon, it became something more. We'd sit by the fire, talking for hours about everything and nothing. He'd tell me about his dreams, his fears, his hopes for the future. And I'd share stories about James, about my life before, about the woman I used to be. There was a connection between us, something undeniable. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. Have you ever felt that kind of connection with someone? That feeling like you've known them forever, even if you've just met? Share your thoughts in the comments. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, Ethan turned to me and said, "Laurel, I need to tell you something." His voice was serious, and I could see the hesitation in his eyes. My heart started to race. What could he possibly say that would make him look so nervous? "I know this might sound crazy," he continued, "but I can't keep pretending. I care about you. More than I should. More than is probably right." I stared at him, my mind racing. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? Could he really feel the same way I did? "Ethan," I started, but he interrupted me. "I know it's complicated. I know there are a million reasons why this shouldn't happen. But I can't help how I feel. And I don't want to." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Have you ever been in a situation where your heart and your head were at war? Where you knew something was risky, but you couldn't help but want it anyway? Type 1 if you've been there. I didn't know what to say. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: fear, excitement, guilt, longing. But one thing was clear: I couldn't deny what I felt anymore. "Ethan," I said softly, reaching out to touch his hand, "I feel it too. I don't know what this means or where it's going, but I can't pretend either." And just like that, everything changed. We didn't have all the answers, and we knew there would be challenges ahead. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the connection between us, the way his hand felt in mine, the way his eyes looked at me like I was the only person in the world. So tell me, have you ever had a moment that changed everything? A moment that made you realize you're not done living, not done loving? Share your story in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this journey with me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories that will touch your heart and awaken your soul. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and never stop feeling.